Dare I ask how you reached such a high rank? Because if you were at school in the 60s, you can't be more than... What makes you so sure they'll offer you a place at Harvard? Asked William, trying to parry his thrust. You can't be more than... 17, said James. I'm top of my class with a grade point average of 4.8, and I'm confident I'll do well in my SATs. He paused before adding, Should I presume you made it to Scotland Yard, Chief Inspector? Yes, William came back. He was used to being interrogated by leading counsel, not teenagers, although he was enjoying the encounter. But if you're that bright, why haven't you considered becoming a lawyer or going into politics? There are far too many lawyers in America, said James with a shrug of the shoulders, and most of them end up chasing ambulances. And politics? I wouldn't be any good at suffering fools gladly, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life at the whim of the electorate or allowing focus groups to dictate my opinions. Whereas if you were to become the director of the FBI, I would be my own master, answering only to the president, and I wouldn't always let him know what I was up to. William laughed at the young man, who clearly didn't suffer from self-doubt. And you, sir? Said James, sounding more relaxed. Are you destined to become the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police? William hesitated again. Clearly you think it's a possibility. James continued before he could reply. May I ask you another question? I can't imagine what would stop you. What do you consider are the most important qualities needed to be a first-class detective? William gave the question some thought before he responded. Natural curiosity, he eventually said. So you immediately spot something that doesn't feel quite right. James took a pen from an inside pocket and began writing William's words down on the back of the Alden Daily News. You must also be able to ask the relevant questions of suspects, witnesses, and colleagues. Avoid making assumptions. And above all, you have to be patient. Which is why women often make better police officers than men. Finally, you must be able to use all your senses: sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. I'm not sure I fully understand, said James. That must be a first, William replied, immediately regretting his words, although the young man laughed for the first time. Close your eyes, said William. He waited for a moment before saying, Describe me. The young man took his time before replying. You're 30, 35 at most, a shade over 6 foot, fair hair, blue eyes, around 170 pounds, fit, but not as fit as you used to be, and you've suffered a serious shoulder injury at some time in the past. What makes you think I'm not as fit as I used to be? Said William defensively. Well, you're about 6 or 7 pounds overweight, and as this is the first day of the voyage, you can't blame the never-ending meals they serve on board ships. William frowned. And the injury? The top 2 buttons of your shirt are undone, and when you leant forward to shake hands, I noticed a faded scar just below your left shoulder. William thought, as he so often did, about his mentor, Constable Fred Yates, who had saved his life only to sacrifice his own. Police work wasn't always as romantic as some authors would have you believe. He moved quickly on. What book am I reading? Watership Down by Richard Adams, and before you ask, you're on page 143. And my clothes, what do they tell you? I admit, said James, I found that a bit of a mystery. It would take me several subtle questions before I came up with an answer, and then only if you told the truth. Let's assume I'm a criminal who won't answer your questions until I've phoned my legal representative. James hesitated for a moment before he said, Well, that in itself would be a clue. Why? It would suggest you've been in trouble with the law before, and if you know the telephone number of your lawyer, you certainly have. Okay, let's assume I don't have a lawyer, but I've watched enough TV programs to know I needn't answer any of your questions. What have you been able to work out without asking me any questions? Your clothes aren't expensive, probably bought off the rack, yet you're traveling first class. What do you deduce from that?